Namaste and greetings from Indic Academy to Snehā ji. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. And we would like to get your views on storytelling, manuscripts, tourism, and how we can connect history to our modern youngsters and culture. So you are here at the Oriental Conference and you presented a paper yesterday.
Yes.
So could you tell us about the paper and your research interests connected to that paper?
Sure. I presented a paper yesterday on the worship and position of Brahma in the sacred landscape of the Mathura region. Generally, when we talk about the Mathura region, the common perception is that it is the land of Krishna, and it is very much the land of Krishna. But other deities, in some way or the other, have been connected to Krishna. Like, for example, in the case of Brahma, we have two major narratives of Brahma in the Puranic texts. One is the narrative where Brahma abducts the Gopa boys and the Vatsas, the calves, and for an entire year he keeps them with himself. But in that period of the whole year, what Krishna does is that he himself takes the form of those many Gopa children and those many Gopa boys. And finally, after the end of the year, Brahma comes to Vraja and he realizes that everything is normal. Those Gopa children are there, the Vatsas are there, and then he goes back to the place where he has kept those, the original ones, and he finds them that they are there, sleeping peacefully. So he realizes that he cannot challenge Krishna. Krishna is omnipresent, Krishna is omniscient. So he returns the Gopa children and the calves back to Krishna, and then he sings a stuti of Krishna where he praises Krishna as the Supreme Lord. In fact, that stuti which is there contains the very idea of Kevala Advaita. So he praises, he eulogizes Krishna and realizes his mistake, and he realizes that I am I'm nothing in front of Krishna's Maya, and Brahma himself comes under the influence of his own Maya. So he realizes that. So there are a couple of places in the Mathura region which are marked by this narrative. And for example, there is a place called Brahma Kunda in Vrindavana. It is just between the Govinda Deva temple, the Rangaji temple, and the Gopeshwara Mahadeva temple. So the oral tradition behind this Brahma Kunda is that when Brahma realized that he cannot subdue Krishna in any way, he cannot defeat Krishna in any way, and when he realized his mistake, that I cannot challenge Paramatma, he shed tears. And apparently the waters of the Brahma Kunda have been formed from those tears. That is the oral tradition. Then similarly, near Mathura or Vrindavana, there is a place called Barsana. Nowadays, Barsana attracts a number of pilgrims because that is supposed to be the place of Radhaji. So Radhaji in Barsana is fondly called Shriji or Ladli Ji, the dear daughter of the household. So the hill on which Ladli Ji's temple is there, the original name of that hill was Brahmeshwara. So probably it had some connection with the worship of Brahma, and there are 4 peaks on that hill. So those 4 peaks are supposed to be the 4 faces of Brahma. He's called Chaturanana. And in the 16th century, there was a saint called Narayana Bhatta. He established the temple of Radha on the hill of Barsana. And apparently, Narayana Bhatta is considered to be an incarnation of Narada. And Narada ji says Narada was the Manasaputra of Brahma. Today, on the hill of Barsana, there is a small temple dedicated to Brahma, which is near the Charan Chinna of Ladli ji. But apparently, no, it is not under active worship. And gradually now the connection between Brahma and the Brahmeshwara hill has been lost. And most people coming there come for the darshan of Ladli ji and Bhagwan Shri Krishna. But mountain worship was very much prevalent in the Vraja region. Actually, there are 3 main hills in the Vraja region. One is, of course, the Govardhana mountain. Govardhana mountain symbolizes Krishna himself because he is Hari and Haridasa Varyam. It has dual identities. Then there is a hill called Nandishwara. This Nandishwara hill is the same as the village called Nandgaon. So that was supposed to be a form of Shiva, and Brahmeshwara hill or Barsana is supposed to be the form of Brahma. So we find quite a few references to Brahma's involvement in the engagement in the Vraja region. Another very important reference comes in the Garga Samhita, where Krishna and Radha get married. So Radha from Parakiya in a way becomes Swakiya, and this wedding was officiated by Brahma, and this is supposed to have taken place in the Vana known as Bhandira Vana, which is on the opposite bank of the Yamuna. And after the wedding rituals were over, Krishna asks Brahma that what do you want? As your Dakshina, you were the officiating priest. So Brahmaji says that the only thing that I want is, an eternal place at the lotus feet of you, Lord Krishna and Radha. I just want your bhakti. So in a way, Brahmaji also becomes a devotee of Krishna. And the sentiment in the Bhagavata Purana is full of bhakti. It's the outpouring of bhakti. So Brahmaji becomes one of the ideal bhaktas of Krishna, we can say so. So that was, all about my paper, and I also studied some sculptures of Brahma. There are hardly any independent sculptures of Brahma in the Mathura region. There is one prominent sculpture which is dated to the 10th or the 11th centuries of the Common Era, and this was found at a kunda called Saraswati Kunda in Mathura. And J.P. Vogel, who was a European art historian, he has commented that this sculpture is a modern one, but no, it is not a modern one. It is an early medieval sculpture. Then there is one more sculpture of Brahmaji and Saraswati. And then there is this Sarvatobhadra Shivalinga, where you have depictions of Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu and Surya. So that is one sculpture of Brahma. And on many sculptures of Vishnu, Shiva, Surya, then even incarnations of Vishnu like Varaha or forms of Vishnu like Yogeshwara, we have Brahmaji being depicted in the right top corner. So I basically combined all these sources like oral traditions, literary references and archaeological evidence to see if there can be a cohesive picture, and I realized that overall the treatment of Brahma in the Mathura region is quite similar to what we find in the rest of India, where he is in a slightly secondary position. But nevertheless, when I was doing my research, I found out that there are a number of tirthas where if you bathe, tirthas in the Yamuna and Mathura, you attain Brahma Loka. Or there is one Brahma Loka tirtha itself, where if you bathe, you attain Vishnu Loka, but through the command of Brahma. So his position is very noteworthy in the Mathura region, and to some extent we find the acculturation of the worship of Brahma into the worship of Krishna and of course Radha also. Yeah.
So how does this very specific research, how does it fit with your overall interest in, you have done a lot of using the same methodology, you have done research.
So my focus is basically Vaishnavism, ancient and medieval Vaishnavism, more to do with ancient Vaishnavism, and of course I also study art history, economic history, general history of religion, archaeology of religion, and my area of focus, the geographical area of my work is the Mathura region. Now that is why I selected this topic, and I found that though Brahma has a fairly prominent presence in the Vraja region or the Mathura region, nobody has actually studied this aspect. And what I wanted to do is bring together all these diverse sources and try to come up with a more cohesive and a more comprehensive picture about the exact status, position and worship of Brahma in the Mathura region. So he was always secondary to the other gods like Vishnu, Shiva or even Surya for that matter, that his presence is marked on the icons of all these deities. So his presence goes beyond sectarian differences. So in a way, the study of Brahma in the Mathura region connects well to the general study which I am doing, because my focus is the Mathura-Vrindavan region. Yes.
So when we what is the is there a difference in approach when we look at it from the Shastra point of view and when we look at it from your lens where you bring in several other inputs. So when we look, when you look from the worship point of view, when we are talking about a certain sampradaya, they tell how to worship. So when we approach the divinity from that angle and we approach it from a historian's perspective, how different is it the experience of the divinity?
In my case, I'll be frank, I'm a bhakta and a historian. I will not say that I am only a historian, I am not a bhakta, because I believe that whatever research I am doing on the Mathura region is because of the grace, because of the anugraha of Bhagwan Shri Krishna and Radharani. So, when you approach, say, any aspect, religious aspect from the believer's point of view, the aspect of Shraddha, the dimension of Shraddha predominates. Whereas when you perceive something from the historical point of view, there some kind of criticism may also creep in and you become more analytical. But when you approach the same deity with Shraddha, then there is no place for doubt. There is no place for questioning. By questioning, I don't mean that you have to believe everything blindly, because our civilization is such that questioning, reinterpretation of what has been said was always encouraged. That's why we find that, even on the Brahma Sutras, Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, there are so many commentaries, and each in its own way is valid. Nobody is saying that only Shankaracharya's commentary is valid or only Ramanujacharya's commentary is valid. In general, any Hindu will accept all these commentaries because one thing which connects all these is Sanatana Dharma. So I feel that when you approach these deities from the perspective of bhakti, then there is little place for doubt. One thing I would like to say is that we must never forget the original context of these sculptures. For us, they are sculptures. They have been affected by the ravages of time. But when they were made with the sentiment of bhakti. We cannot forget that. Even when we see a temple, when we see a cave, they were mathas, they were temples, they were places of worship. There were places where the archers, some are, erstwhile acharyas have meditated, taught the shishyas, expounded great spiritual truths. So today they may be heritage buildings, but we can never forget their original context, that they were not made to be heritage buildings. They were made to be places where there is a living presence of God, where you worship, where you pray with Shraddha and Bhakti. So we should never forget the original context of these sculptures, because Murti Puja, Pratima Pujana is a dimension, is a very important dimension of Bhakti. So that's why I feel that one must always keep in mind, bear in mind, you may or may not believe in God, but you have to respect the sentiments behind the creation of that icon. And this is exactly what we do in post-processual archaeology, where through the material culture, through that icon, we try to decipher the greater spiritual truths, the more transcendental truths, the more transcendental elements which have contributed towards the creation of a particular icon or a religious monument. Yeah.
Snehaji, when we talk about heritage, we focus on the tangible heritage, but there's a very huge component of intangible heritage, which could be through the songs or through festivals, celebration of Holi. Could you talk to us something about the intangible heritage of this region and how has it been documented?
Sure. There has been an attempt to document the folk stories in Braja. There was a very eminent scholar in Braja called Dr. Satyendra, and he has done a lot of research on the folk narratives of Braja, and sometimes they relate to Krishna, sometimes they do not relate to Krishna. Then another attempt has been done by a lady from the Chaturvedi Brahmana community, and she has collected the songs of the Chaturvedi Brahmanas. The Chaturvedi Brahmanas are the native residents of Mathura. They are called the Mathura Chaturvedis. So she has collected many of their oral songs. And one of those oral songs I happened to read, which is about the parikrama of Mathura. So these Chaturvedi Brahmanas, they perform the parikrama of Mathura, and that song actually documents every, single shrine that they visit. And many scholars who are working even on on the tangible aspects of Mathura have taken into consideration the dimensions of the intangible heritage also. Then in Mathura there is another important tradition of it's called Narsingh Leela, and that is also has been documented. Then another very important art tradition in Mathura is Sanji. Sanji is done with cow dung also and with something like rangoli powder, and that is done during Pitru Paksha. So there is a institution in Vrindavan called the Braj Sanskriti Shodha Sansthan, with which I am associated. So Braj Sanskriti Shodha Sansthan has really done commendable work as far as preserving the Sanji art is concerned. When I mentioned this Brahma Kunda, so Sanji designs were made at this Brahma Kunda, and Braj Sanskriti Shodh Sansthan organizes a Sanji Mela during Pitru Paksha, and they invite artists who draw that Sanji. So Sanji is a part of intangible and tangible heritage, because there are also songs related to Sanji, and they talk about the love between Sri Krishna and Radhaji. So Sanji is both a part of tangible and intangible heritage. And apart from these, there are a number of folk songs which are sung during festivals, and number of folk stories. Some of those folk stories are also related to the saints in Braja, like the six Goswamis of Vrindavana, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or Hitahari Vansha. So they may not be documented as such, but they are very much prevalent in the minds. They are very much alive in the minds of the Brajavasis. Similarly, when people perform the Braja Yatra, there is a narrative about each and every place. That you take any kunda, so okay, Bhagwan Sri Krishna bathed here, or he performed this Leela here. You may not find it in any of the Puranas, but these local narratives are very much there, and the local people are aware about these narratives. So these are oral traditions. These are a part of the intangible heritage. So in fact, these narratives have helped in the preservation of the kundas and all.
Yeah.
Even in the region of Govardhana, like there are so many stories about Krishna's consecration, and Krishna performing some leela or the other in the vicinity of Govardhana. So the intangible heritage of Braja is as important as the tangible heritage, and in a way, the intangible heritage has helped in the preservation of the tangible heritage.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and it was really lovely hearing about the region, and us being in Udupi.
Yes.
It resonates with everything. I'm sure, there are stories of comparisons of what prasadam is given to Sri Krishna
Yes.
in different parts of India.
Yes.
The prasadam varies. Which songs are sung to him to put him to sleep in different parts of the country.
Yes.
So if there are scholars like you focusing on one region, it would be interesting for us also to do a cross-cultural comparison of traditions across India.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Snehā ji, and such a lovely conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.